This is a Global Skills podcast, conversations that shape the future of work and learning. We're exploring how we close the skills gap and build a future where everyone has the chance to thrive. From education to business, connecting people, ideas, and opportunities that drive change. It's about collaboration, curiosity, and creating real impact today. Because every skill learned brings us one step closer to a more inclusive world. The Global Skills Podcast, where learning and opportunity come together. Today's guest is Paul Bird, a true bridge builder between education, wellbeing, and the future of work. Paul is Head of Learning at the Lighthouse Charity, one of the UK's most important charities supporting people across the construction industry. His focus goes far beyond training. It's about mental health, wellbeing, neurodiversity, and creating learning experiences that genuinely meet people where they're at. With a strong background in teaching, English, and media, Paul brings creativity, empathy, and clarity into an industry often overlooked when it comes to human-centered development. He's deeply involved in shaping new learning pathways, speaking nationally about skills, well-being, and how we build a stronger, more inclusive future workforce. This is a conversation about people first, skills second, and the impact that lasts. So let's get into it. Paul, you're very, very welcome.
Thanks for having me, Vanessa. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
I love to ask people from the outset, how did you end up in the role that you're in, specifically within construction and in the capacity of learning and development?
Yeah, it's a strange one, really. I do come from a family of a lot of sort of blue collar workers, working class people. So, we had plumbers and mechanics and carpenters, and I was just not interested in any of that, really. I was interested in it, but I think looking back at it now, I knew that it wasn't the skill set for me. My dad really put me off a lot. He was very much about sort of like, don't go into this industry. It's really difficult. It's really hard. I remember him coming back, as I think I've said before, like in the bathwater was grey. He'd get in there. He was tired. He was exhausted. And really, I think at that time, if I'd gone to talk to my careers teacher, they would have said, oh, no, I don't think this would be the industry for you. And they talked a lot about, obviously, my interest in English and media. I kind of went into teaching, sort of fell into that over a while after being involved in like performance. I did music, I did comedy, I did acting, all that sort of thing, that really in a working class town in the north of England probably wasn't the most mainstream thing at the time. Probably a lot more accepted now, Yeah, so I went into that and I got really involved in teaching, really enjoyed it. Loved creating experiences for the kids, loved creating education kind of things for the kids that we could do. I was very early on motivated by a lady who told me, if I tell you something, you're 10% likely to remember it. If I lead you to the answer, you're 90% likely to remember it. And it got me very, very interested in retention and stickability, and trying to make sure we create like learning experiences that isn't just somebody talking over a PowerPoint.
And what about now, today, with how our education system is, and kids are feeling more and more that it feels like a memory test, the whole early education before you choose pathway? Because
Yeah, we really measure intelligence by like reading a paragraph and writing about it. And it doesn't matter what subject. I think a lot, particularly in England after the 2015 reforms, we really just started to say, can you read this paragraph and can you write about it? And really what kids wanted to do is, they're on screens all the time. That screens are literally the way that they're experiencing the world. So I think having those practical things that are, like I say, something in construction where, it's all five senses construction. It's like you're outside, sometimes in the elements, you're doing things with your hands, you're creating things. And not everybody's a writer. I teach English and I know that not everybody's a writer. Some of us, we want to manifest our intelligence in different ways, and really focusing back on trades. I've said to many people, if you go to Japan and you're a master tradesman, that's like a title. That's like being a sir or a baroness. It's like literally something that you can have, or a professor. You are a master craftsman, and these people can create things that are amazing. And I think really that takes us back to what's really, many people talk to me in the industry about the romance of construction, using really good materials, creating something that's going to long last. Whereas we've seen a massive trend of sort of downgrading and more of a race to the bottom to use cheaper materials, cheaper labour, not to give it what it deserves. And I wouldn't expect a young person to go into an industry that doesn't really take that pride in itself, in a way. And I think there's people are crying out for it within the industry to say, this is a trade, this is a craft, this is something you get better. It's not a quick win, it's something you do over time.
And a lot of people have been saying with AI, it's going to be taking the white collar jobs. And actually, there's going to be a growth in apprenticeships, which will mean hopefully more volume into the construction industry. But then another camp is saying, oh, no, we're going to have robots and humanoids that will be able to do the work of construction workers.
I think it's also really about work, generally what work does for us apart from earning money. I know like a lot of people can be quite unhappy in their jobs. And I think we're reaching this point in sort of human evolution where we think, what is work for? Is it just for us to earn money, or does it give us that sense of self-worth and self-esteem? When I first started teaching, I worked with a lot of people that had been unemployed. A lot of it was what you would call NEETs in England, which is not in education. I told you about my acronyms, not in education, employment, or training. And there is a group of young people that are just out of all of that. And I've worked with people who are long-term unemployed, and I've looked at their CVs, and I feel sort of a slight sadness or a regret for some of the people who've not been in work. Because I know being in work has enabled me to have some great friendships. I've had fun in work. I mean, that's people say, really? But yeah, I've had things that have been fun in work, and it's enriched me. It's given me a growth path. It's associated things in my personal life and in my professional life. And I think it's about time that we start to reevaluate what's work for. It pays the bills, it generates things in the economy, but it does give herself a sense of self-worth and self-value. And when I've talked to people about being in work, one of the things that always comes up in time and time, why do people leave a job? Why do people leave a role? And it's 90% I found is because people felt that they weren't being valued. They weren't being treated well. That, to me, is a sign to show that really we look at work to give us something apart from that.
And within construction, what is the attrition rate like for the industry as a whole? I really don't know. And does it vary greatly if you're a bricklayer or a plumber versus if you're a manager within a construction firm?
Yeah, it can make a massive difference because when we talk about construction, we can say, well, what's a construction worker? It's uniquely as diverse as any other industry. And I know I've had conversations with people before when they'll say, well, your average construction worker. And I'd be like, I'd be keen to know what that's like, or you could show me an example of what the average construction worker. They are quite diverse, and diversity will be the future, I believe, of the industry. It's what everybody's looking for it to be. I think the main problem is the way that the industry is set up, particularly in the UK. We have 2.1 million people employed in the UK within construction, and that is a massive variety. So you've got your class people. I'm classed as working in construction as being a construction charity. You also have people who work in IT, in the offices, cleaners, all sorts of levels within that. But if you're talking about your trades, one of the things that really stands out in the UK is out of those 2.1 million people that are working, 38% of them are sole traders. So they're one-man bands, people working for themselves. And again, that can come with risks, particularly the way that the industry is structured. And also, if you think about the companies across the UK, and I haven't got the stats for Ireland, so I'm sorry, but across the UK, there are about 450,000 companies, and they range from different sizes. But most of them, 98% of those companies are less than 50 workers. And then like 94% of them are less than 25, and 81% are less than 10 people. So it's very fragmented in the way that other industries are. And I was really privileged to see the CEO, Tim Balcom, from the Construction Industry Training Board talk through the day that the film industry is very, very similarly structured, which I found fascinating, that there was these huge companies employing subcontractors and contractors to get all of this work done. And because of that, payments trickle down in different ways. The human error side of it, companies go bust. And at some point at the end of these, we're finding people are not being paid. They're waiting for payments. They're struggling to pay their tax. And that's when they come back to the Lighthouse, to our wonderful 24 hours a day, 365 days a year helpline, where they can ring somebody, speak to someone. That's the UK and Ireland. They can contact us and we can help. We can help financially. We can help with counselling. But we found that the fragmentation of the industry is causing to break up families. And unfortunately, our headline figure is that in the UK, roughly 2 construction workers a day take their own lives. And that's something that we're committed to reducing. So when we talk about that skills gap, what we have to make sure is that we're getting this industry ready for young people to come and take part. getting that house in order would be a wonderful thing because it is an industry that will grow. It is very people centric. And I can only see that growing over time. And particularly when you talk about things like heritage building or retrofitting, there's a room there for somebody to take part in a really great sort of trade, which they can take throughout their life.
You covered so much there, Paul, and obviously the big one that's standing out there is the loss of life. And I think I'd love to build up to that in terms of understanding it more. It's funny that you said at the very outset about construction skills or workers, like what is
Mm,
a construction worker? And it's
mm,
true. There's this stereotype carrying the
yeah,
tools, coming in to do a piece of work that needs to be done in the
yeah.
house or building a house, but it's so much broader. And I'm kind of interested in understanding young people. So if we put a definition or an age group, say 16 to 19, when they're kind of
Mm.
trying to decide what'll I do, are there career pathways that are outlined to young people within the construction industry so they truly know all of the pathways and all the skills they can acquire,
Yeah,
courses they can take?
yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the training is kind of, I think, sort of bogged down in sort of older legislation, which will say until they get to sort of leaving school at 16, they can't really talk about that. I mean, within the Lighthouse, we're looking at a program that I've developed called Build Your Future, which is about engaging kids, about looking at my background as a school teacher, as long as 11 and 12, and thinking about like, we can have those conversations then. But usually what happens, they get to school and it becomes this kind of port that sometimes, depending on how they've done academically, that might take them into construction rather than it being a choice. And I would say it's more important to make sure that we're getting the best people into the industry, the people who are most suited into the industry by having those conversations earlier. And I think the way that we have the career system here is that, yes, we do give people plenty of freedom. That is wonderful. But some points you've got to sit there as an institutions and say, well, what's needed by communities? What should we push and encourage people to take part? And also, why is it that I was very taken by a process which is called reverse mentoring. So instead of mentoring somebody who's my mentee will come and talk to me and I say, well, what do you need? What do I need to give you to help you rather than telling them what they want and need? And I think for some of the young people, we need to start listening in different industries and saying, what is it that you want from us? How can we make this attractive to you? How can we make this so it fits nicely with you and you bring your new skills? Because we have to think, again, I think I spoke before that I was very influenced by a guy called Martin Brown, who was the regenerative. And he said to me, who came before you? Who's going to come after you? Where do you sit? And really, we have to start thinking about some of the young people that are coming into various industries, not just construction, and saying, what do you need? What can we give you? How can we help you? Because we've had a great time working. We would like to pass that baton on.
That's a massive shift for if you think about the 2 or 3 generations that are in the industry at the moment. So our age profile, maybe we could see both sides. But if
Yeah,
I think about the managers, directors that would have inducted me or the people that were my age at the time,
yeah,
to say to them now, let's reverse mentor that
yeah.
that's a 360. Would you agree?
Kind of. It's something very old, but something very new. And I mean, if we
Yeah.
think about the true meaning of an apprenticeship, if we go back a couple of 100 years and you went to the blacksmith, he'd bring you in, he'd show you the ropes, because he knew he might not be around in 20 years' time, because people aged differently back then. So it was a necessity, and it was usually family that those things happened. It was a necessity. And I think that was really understood. So I think the current trend where we've moved from really what I would say back in the 1960s or 50s, you'd have personnel, which was about people and their names and who they were as people and what they brought. We move really from, the CEO, Simon Sinek, talks about this, is that we've gone from a model of sort of people-centric kind of thing to human resources, where we're the same as bricks or paper, or we're just a thing to be put up and dropped. And people hear that. They hear that it's human resources, and it makes them feel diminished and small. So when they have to engage with some of those things, they find that really difficult.
Yeah, that's a profound line. I don't think I've ever viewed human resources in that way before. And I think about young people, I've had the privilege of getting to connect with a lot of young people recently and do surveys, and they're reading the headlines, they're
Yeah.
reading the news, and they're seeing how humans can be dispensable. So I guess this ties in with now the mental health, if we could revisit that, because
Yeah, absolutely.
it's hard, but I know that that's the work that you do. And I guess
Yeah.
my first question is, why do you feel the suicide rate is so high within construction, outside of the fragmentation, is there anything
Yeah.
else that's impacting it?
I mean, I've spent probably about 3 years looking at this, reading lots of research papers, speaking to people who work within the industry, trying to listen as much as I can. And I think it's a combination of factors, really. In the Lighthouse, we talk about 3 pillars that we support. We support financial, physical, and emotional well-being. We don't tend to use the term mental health as much, and I'll give you the reason that I've come away from that and talked about well-being. If I talk to you about mental health, and this was the psychiatrist that I consulted with, talked about this, he said there are certain things that are disorders. So it could be PTSD, it could be OCD, ADHD, which I do have and I'm medicated for, and I feel so much better for it. But those things are disorders. And on the other side, we have happiness. What's our mood? How are we feeling day to day? And those two things kind of get lumped in together, but I think they're very different things. So there's our mood generally, how we're feeling every day. We're in a good mood. So I'm looking out my window here and I can see grey skies. I've seen them for about 3 weeks and it makes me feel down. When the sun lights out, I feel much better. So there's that happiness, that kind of general how we're feeling. And then the other part is disorders that can be caused sometimes genetically, but also environmentally by different things that happen in our lives. So we have to make sure we keep those two things very, very separate. So we really talk about emotional well-being, particularly in the industry and how people are feeling. There's a couple of things going on, I think. One, if you really look at the demographics, it is straight blokes, usually white, working class, that are part of those trades things. And as you grow up in those areas, I think you're very much told to, I saw a comedian talk about this. One of the worst things for a straight man is to be understood. So we don't want to be as understood. We want to shut that down, keep the communication brief for fear of ridicule or being made fun of, or sometimes in those kind of little pack mentality things you can have, those can cause that problem and not wanting to talk. And within the charity, we have a wonderful Make It Visible team who are lads that have been in construction. They go around sites and they talk about this. And they'll start with their talks with a load of lads, arms crossed, not listening. And by the end of it, we've had some people crying. We've had people getting very emotional because they found that time, actually, this is a safe space. And I think men do communicate and we do speak about our problems, but it's very contextual. It's very situational. So I'll give you an example. Played in a band for a long time. In between when we're doing songs and stopping, we'll stop and we'll talk. And we'll have those moments. And it could be a football team. It could be... So as long as we've got the right environment, we'll talk. But I think for a lot of heterosexual, white, working class men, you put them on a chair and go, right, start talking about it. It's awkward. It's weird. Why are you putting me under this? It's a strange thing. So I think that's one, about maybe the demographics of the industry. Also, I've talked about the way that the finances are structured, the way that they're waiting for payments, how the tax system is sorted. All of those things contribute. The race to the bottom, how we might be bidding for contracts, underbidding, companies closing, subcontracts. That's another thing. But then also you're talking about long hours, working away from home, working away from their families. There's elements of drugs and alcohol that are being used to cope, where necessarily if something else was being used and the right facilities and the right encouragement and the right motivation, that might help. So I think what you're having is a combination of factors that are all impacting off each other, that are causing a diminishment in sort of someone's well-being, which will then escalate into something like the main problems that we have in the industry. I'm sure it's in most industries: depression, fatigue, anxiety.
Well, the work that you're doing is incredible.
Thank you.
You know, and the fact that you're covering Ireland and the UK, when it comes to raising funds for your charity, how do you do it? What sort of activities do you do in order to raise the funds?
We are funded by some very generous company supporters. Some of the biggest names in construction do fund us directly. That makes a massive help. But then I also have to give out a shout to everybody else who fundraises for us, whether doing that bike ride from Land's End to John O'Groats, whether they're doing things within their own communities to raise things. It's our beacons, which are our small clubs that are all over the country. That's our legacy of 70 years in the industry. We have all of these beacons, these little clubs where men can go and join, or sorry, not just men, anyone within construction. I was just talking about men's mental health. But yeah, so there's those places we can do. And again, our company supporters help us. You know, any of the people who come to join us as company supporters, we give them services, we give them things that you can do, some of our training that we've been working on to make sure that we support people and that money goes to its best usage.
Quick question. Do you actually know what skills exist across your organisations today? Or are decisions still being made on job titles, CVs and assumptions around who can be reskilled and upskilled? You see, as AI reshapes work and organisations really face that pressure to cut costs, the real challenge isn't just skills gaps. It's understanding which skills are transferable and which can be redeployed into the future with a bit of upskilling. So for the listeners of Global Skills Podcast, Abodu, our sponsor, has created this free Skills AI readiness assessment. It gives leaders clarity in just 3 minutes. It shows skills gaps, automation exposure, and where future-ready capabilities already exist within your business. No data upload, no preparation, just clarity for the future of your organisation. Visit abodu.com/global skills podcast. Now, back to the episode.
You shared with me that in the last few weeks, there's been a number of updates around the learning and development that you've been focused on. And I know when we were speaking initially, I had never really looked at the construction industry. A lot of the work I've done to date has been, I guess, in technology and sustainability, where there's a lot of micro-credential courses being developed. And now those industries are realizing, well, okay, you've your certified programs that you have to do, and they're on an annual basis, and you have to do that to either be compliant. But you've all these other new skill sets. And rather than just throwing hundreds and thousands of courses, we've been looking at, well, how can we leverage a skills passport to be able to personalize learning journeys?
That's really interesting.
And I never looked at construction. And then I started to try and understand. I'd love you to elaborate more the extent and breadth of the learning and development that's happening and the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So our training department is expanding. We've traditionally used mental health first aider England in what we do. We have what's called our Wellbeing Academy, which is like e-learning courses that it's not just about reading. It's like lots of little puzzles, little games, interactive stories that people will go through. So we've tried to make the learning as engaging as it can be without losing the learning there. It's micro learning. It's learning that you can sort of pick up and drop whenever you need to. And that's totally free. That's on our Wellbeing Academy. Anyone can register for that. And then we're developing two of our new courses. So our first major new course is a program we call Foundation. And Foundation is really for us to celebrate the 70 years that we've been in the industry. So Foundation is about creating somebody on your site that can look out for people. So it could be that you have a small team under you, maybe like 5 or 10, and we're really focused on the middle leaders. We know that the senior leaders are far too busy and the boots on the ground are far too out on site and can't necessarily engage with the technology that we deliver it. But this is for middle leaders. So it breaks into 3 parts. We have our emotional support, our financial guide, and our physical safeguarder. So by taking those qualifications, what we want people to do is have a toolkit. So say, for example, you're on site and you've got 10 lads and somebody's not looking their best. We want to empower that person to have the skills to have a chat, do the soft skills stuff, like how are you doing today? How's everything going on? So if you've got someone on your site and they're going through a breakup, if you've got someone on your site and they're struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol, it's going to give you the tools to where we're not there and our helpline's not there, to point them in the right direction, to kind of guide them in the right place, and also protect yourself in the same time, because that is important, but to make sure that there's somebody on site that somebody can always go and talk to. I remember hearing somebody at a meeting we'd been, and the guy was really annoyed that a young lad had come to do on a course and he brought his mum with him. And the mum was talking because the lad was quite shy. And he was going, why am I talking to the mums? And I said, oh, what you're saying that construction needs more mums. And he was like, he was a bit lost. And I was thinking, well, yeah, it does. We all need people in work, somebody there that we can go and talk to when things go wrong. And what we want to do is certify and give you that training to do that. So that's Foundation. But we're also doing some other packages. So we're doing one called Built for Growth, which is about bringing people into the industry. And we want to be there from taking your hand from when you come in at apprenticeship to post-retirement, and giving you some sort of context. We want to be there all of that time. And we're thinking far in the future now. And also we've got one that's called Built for Growth. So while you're working, there'll be things like andropause, menopause. I only heard about andropause last year. We've got a very skilled trainer within our department, Lara, who comes up with this course, andropause, about how men's bodies change as they age. We talk about menopause. We talk about what happens when families break up, when relations break up. How can we keep people and retain them in the industry? Because retainment is very, very important. And then finally, we have one called Built Different. So maybe you're neurodiverse. A quarter of the UK industry is ADHD or autism. We have, anyone who's from LGBTQIA+, anyone who's from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. We're going to say, look, it's time the industry understands. It's got to get more diverse. How can we make this space more welcoming and make it more a safer psychological space that more people and that breadth of talent can join this wonderful industry?
Paul, you're pioneering. I like
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
within construction, but I'm really hoping we've got listeners from other industries listening to this, because every industry needs to do this. Maybe the issues are not as big in other industries in terms of loss of life or, impact.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we look at the number of redundancies that are going to come to different industries, it's going to hit people really hard. So the ones that are left behind in roles, we need to look after them. And then obviously we need another solution for those that don't have the roles. I think it's phenomenal.
I mean, we need to talk about work, generally. We need to talk about work. Where's it going? What are we doing? Are we going to work 40 hours a week carrying forward, or can we bring those hours down so everybody gets something? We need to talk about work. This conversation's long overdue.
I couldn't agree more. If I gave you a magic wand for the industry and the next few years and you could wave that magic wand, what would you like to see happen?
I would hope it would do things where it starts to fall back onto its sort of fundamental principles. Some of the things it's lost, I think, like I've talked before, making good use of sustainable materials, like get right on that. That's a wonderful thing to do. Having people enjoy and be proud of the work that they make. I had a friend that I still drive past a house that he worked on 40, 50 years ago and says, look at that, that was mine, that was. That's the kind of things where we know that what we do has impact on others. So also we need to make sure that work is a safer space. There's so many people that will tell me again, I've talked about our Make It Visible team, the lads that go out on the sites and talk to people, and they'll say the first thing that they notice when they get there is just the site manager comes out to greet them smiling and says, hey up lads, how are you? Come on, I'll show you around. They know it's going to be a great site. If they turn up and they feel someone squirreled away in their office, not speaking, they know there's going to be problems. And I think that's kind of common sense, isn't it? So it's about making sure that we make this work a welcoming space. So my magic one would say, making sure that we start doing more retrofitting, more making sure we take some of those old buildings and sort of look back to our past, which I think is essential, taking us to our future, but just kind of rebuilding these spaces, giving people meaningful work, meaningful things to do, that when they leave work, they think, I did a good job today, and they're happy. I think it's completely possible to do. It's just having that time to sit down and just say, stop, we need to talk about work. We need to make sure that people feel fulfilled and are happy in their lives. And then all of us then can get on with it and make sure that we're creating a proper future. So my magic one would be that, just making sure that we're all feeling happy and fulfilled and prepared and valued.
And I think showing young people just how fantastic this industry is. And there's so much more scope beyond what maybe traditionally we all thought. We have a closing tradition for this podcast where I ask two questions. Okay. You can answer both or one. It's up to you. The first is, have you a skill that you used a lot when you were younger that you don't use as much anymore, but you'd like to? And if so, why?
Okay, that's great. Okay, that's a good one.
The second question is, I usually say, for those that are maybe starting out or unemployed, but I think I'm going to say for anyone listening and just struggling, whether they're working or not working, what actions could they take to just help themselves, be happier?
I would say this, definitely. This is one thing. Actually, they're connected. I'm going to say this a bit more. So I came out of college. I did an extra year at college. I think I came about 19, and I came out to a world back then where there was nothing. There was YTS was just being, the young youth training scheme in the UK was just being wound up. You either went to college, university was being pushed, there was nothing to go. So the first thing I did, I was unemployed for probably about 18 months. So the first thing I did is I went and worked in a charity shop and I volunteered. And I would say, if you're not working, volunteer. Just go off and find something to volunteer and do. It doesn't have to be a lot of hours on your time. It could be hours, a couple of hours a week. If you volunteer in a place and you do something without payment and you turn up and you feel part of a team and you valued, that is starting you on your path. Go and be part of something. You'll find that there's classic things from depression is that you can go through the cycle, you start to shut everything down. So you're not talking to people, you're not socializing, you're not getting outside in nature, you're not doing those things. So say to a young person, if you're a bit lost, go and volunteer, find something. There's plenty of look for volunteers. Get out there and give your time freely and be valued and be part of something that's going to push you in the right way.
And any skill that you don't use anymore that you'd like to use more of?
I think that's the same thing. I do quite a bit of volunteering on things, but I think find another project to go and volunteer on and use that skill and be in that, going back on that cycle, finding something. So I might go and do a couple of hours in a charity shop and get an even nicer jumper.
Paul, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I've really enjoyed it.
An incredible interview in that, I suppose I made the same stereotype. I know we'd met before, but I thought, well, we might just get into the construction pathways and the type of reskilling, but there's so much more. And I think for young people listening, perhaps if they haven't considered an industry, it's an industry. But even mid-careers, people who've been made redundant, so many jobs, it's not just the physical side. And if people, leaders that are listening, or educators, and they've been blown away like I have been on all these courses and trainings that you've developed, is there anywhere that they can go and check out what the work that you've done that's available?
Yeah, they can come to our Wellbeing Academy. We are just about to launch our new courses in the spring equinox in March 20th, because that's when we're all feeling a bit warmer and a bit nicer. So they can search for us, Lighthouse Charity, on your various internet search providers. And we'll usually come to the top. So it would be www.lighthousecharity.org. Come and have an explore of the site. There's lots of information on there of training, lots of information and guidance we can give you, start bringing you into the industry. And also, if you are already in the industry and you are needing to seek help, we're there. Please come and find us. That's what we're here to do.
Paul, thank you so much. We'll make sure to include all the links below as well. It's just been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Whether you're leading a business, shaping education, planning your next career move, or just starting out, you're part of a global conversation about how we learn, work, and grow. If you've enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And for early access to new episodes, first invites to events, and a chance to connect with others driving real change, join the community at globalskillspodcast.com, because the future of skills belongs to all of us.